Okay, let me share my screen here. Okay, so last time we were been talking about different commands and different scenarios related to the Docker, especially the how to create an image using a Docker file, what are the instructions, how that would looks like, everything we have seen. And today, what we do is we will talk about the Docker compose files and Docker registries. Why? Because these are the another two major things. If we are working on a Docker, right? These are another two major things that we do generally need to work with that, because whenever you done creation with the image, you have to store it somewhere, right? That place is called a registry, Docker registry. For example, if you some code in write a code in either of the language, we use some kind of a source code management tool, right? For storing and for version control management system, we use a GitHub or Bitbucket or GitLab. These are the some of the source code management tools to maintain or to do version control and to storage the distribution version control system, right? In a similar way, when you create an image, that image you have to store it in some place. That places is called a registry, Docker registry. Okay, so this is where you can share your code with the different people, meaning you are distributing your Docker content or Docker image through a registry. So there are two types of registries. One is a Docker private registry and public registry. This is the place where you would be working. And another one is you would be talking about the Docker Compose. Till now, what we have done is, till now we have we will talk we will talk deeply all this one. So we
Like
are talking about the Docker Compose here. So when you say Docker Compose, generally what we have learned till now is how to start a container, or how to create an image. When you start a container, so when you start an image, a container will get started. How do you start an image? Docker run, and the port numbers, the volumes, if it is, and it is an interactive mode, the image name. Okay, this is a syntax or basic syntax of a Docker image. Okay, Docker, how to start an image. Okay, so for example, this image is image one. This there is an image two. There are multiple things, meaning you have a multiple images that you want to start, or you want to manage. In real time, the images could be something like this. The image is app server one. This is another app server two. Okay, and this is something like app server 3, or simply it could be a microservice. Okay, this is a database container. Generally this required a volumes also. Maybe this is also required, meaning you have these many containers. Each container could be an application server, that could be a microservices also. Okay, so if you want to work with all these, right, generally, right, what you generally do is, let me put it this way here. Okay, uh there is an image. This is your system, and this is a container one, this is a container two, and this is a container three. Okay, each container is a microservice. And one more thing is, these are the three containers. Okay, so in these three containers, there is another container called database container. Okay, for example, these 3 in a one network, database in another network. This is very private and secured configuration of a Docker network, meaning these three microservices or these three app server containers are communicate each other because in the same network, and you have to bridge these two network in order to communicate the containers which are inside from this network to this network. Meaning if we want to create a bridge network between the two different networks here, so then these two able to create a communication or establish a communication between these containers. Okay, so at that time what you need to do is you have to pass couple of parameters while running a Docker image itself. Okay, let's see. Okay, Docker image, and this is my container name or this is my image name, and I want my container name to be name equal to microservice one. Okay, this is I mean, when you pass a hyphen hyphen name, meaning you are telling to your container, please start a container name with hyphen hyphen name value. This is a microservice two. Okay, this is another one. This is another one. Hyphen name equal to S3, I mean microservice S3, and this is a regular one that we do generally deal or how to run this. And assuming all these servers require a port forwarding, and of course the port looks like something like this. 8080, and even this container is also exposing maybe probably this container doesn't require volume to be exposed, and 9080, and this is 9001. This container is also exposing an 80 port, and this is 5432 in host name also 5432, and volume is current directory data colon where lib data. So this is one. Okay, so these are the four containers that we now if we want to communicate with these networks, right, what you need to do is you have to pass one more parameter called hyphen hyphen network. Hyphen hyphen network name is, now we are talking about this one, app network. Okay, so hyphen hyphen network, I mean you have to pass the network name while starting a while starting an image itself. This is where all three will be communicate each other. Now this one hyphen hyphen network, what you should do also is this is also you have to give DB network. Now two different networks are getting created. So in order to create a network, right, there is a command called docker create network. Docker create network. The name is DB network. Docker create network app network. So there is a similar command, and if you want to see the list of Docker network, ls should will give you the all the network related commands. Now we have to bridge these two network. So the why we are talking about it is we need to maintain or we need to work with the multiple containers like this in order to run or in order to maintain a relation between all of this like this. It is some kind of a tedious task. Not I can't say tedious task, it's okay, manageable if we have a 3 or 4 5 containers, or at max of 10 containers. If you have 10 containers, it's okay to manage like this. But it's very difficult if you are growing, if your containers are growing like anything, because one project contain a multiple microservices, and each microservices is a container. Okay. And so if the project contains a 10 modules, 10 microservices you would be creating, and 10 containers you have to deal with that. So it is a difficult, I could say. So what you need to do is, there is a in order to save this kind of an issues, in order to maintain a multiple containers, there is a something called Docker Compose. Okay. So this would help you to deal with the multiple containers with a single file. So, I mean, you write a Docker Compose file. Compose means what? Compose is like orchestrating, right? Or compose means mixing multiple things together. That is right. In a similar fashion, you will also writing a one Docker Compose file in the name of service. For example, microservice one, and you have to specify image name is, I'm trying to convert this now, okay, into a Docker Compose file. So image name is this. What is that? App server one. And is it required any of the variables? Yes, it required a port. Okay, so the port is 80. And for example, the port is here, 8080, and then 8000, 80. So what else? Yes, it required a network parameters. So the network parameter is app network. So this is how you do define your service. Okay. Basically, first we would be defining services. After that, services. Of course, the syntax could be a different. Not different, I could say. It may not be the accurate, but the still is the structure looks like this one. So I'm having multiple services like this, service one. And now what I'll do is I'll create a similar service for another microservice. This is MS2, and the image which is going to use is this. And this is the port number. This is also in the same network. So like this, I'll be having another microservice. Okay, another service three, and this is 90001. So this is how you would be creating a compose file. Simply, how do you run is Docker compose up. That's it. So, and if we otherwise, what you need to do is you have to give your compose file name .yaml. Everything, whatever the syntax that we have just written, right? This is a YAML format. Yet to another markup language. This is where you would be writing Ansible scripts also in a YAML format. Okay, but even in the Docker Compose files also, you would be writing all this content in a YAML format. This once it is started, automatically spin up all the containers. Okay. Now let's see in a practical how do we do, and how are some relevant or how a real things looks like. Okay. Any questions, guys, before going ahead? So I just told you the main part. The clear theoretical part. Now let's do the practical. Okay. Now what I'm talking about is the Docker Compose. Of course, we need to talk about the Docker registries. We will talk the Docker registries also. So let's take a simple GitHub and all the stuff here. Okay, see this. Let's put something here. Okay, let's take this and see how these guys are doing here. Okay, he has defined is called, for example, Docker compose. Where is this? Okay, let me start my VM. Okay, Sharanya, thank you. It looks if it is clear, no issues. Okay, now let's stop this. You have to save in a docker compose.yaml file, and then you just use the command called docker compose hub, and automatically it spin up it up. Okay, but the thing is, what they are doing here is they are building it. Okay, building means if you remembered in our previous classes, we have used something called docker build. Okay, we have created a what do you say, docker build -t image name, right, and then tag colon dot, and automatically it created an image. We will show you. Yesterday we have created a couple of other images also here, right? Okay, 220. Okay, and okay, we have created a couple of images, right? Yesterday, I mean, with the using a docker build. Okay, so the command that we have used at the time is about the, okay, it does not here, but the command is this one: docker space build space -t, the image name and tag, docker build -t, image is Naren Linux, colon latest space dot. So what does it do is it will take the file, it will take the content from the docker file and then generate an image. Okay, what these guys are also doing here is create a service. The services, create a services, and the service name is web, and the, when you say build, right, it is executing it, meaning it is creating a build, meaning it is creating a web image, and then while creating it, expose the ports and then attach a volume. Similarly, create another service called redis, use that. Don't create a image for this, please use a image called redis which is already available. That is what these guys are telling. So meaning this compose file is taking two things. One is, I mean, taking two services, and each service is, one service is building an image and then using a existing image. These are the two things which is been using. Now, if there is an, if I want to add my service here, what I do is web server one. This is my server service name, and then here use image called Naren. Here, what is the image? Naren image. This is 0.0.1, right? So similarly, 0.1. So this is it. So I can include my services here. Okay. Now what we do is don't go directly with the build. First we will take another part which is very simply docker compose with nginx and database. Yeah, this guy is clearly saying, yeah, see this would be a good example, I could say. Okay, so what these guys are saying is, first they are creating a environment, meaning they are creating a one folder, going inside a folder, and then they are creating a two a password files. Why? Because I mean, let's take an example of the compose file. They are creating a two things. One is a one web server, one database server. For the web server, they are using image called Nginx, and for the database, they are using a MySQL. Okay. Now let's see if we want to use a MySQL or if you want to use a Nginx, what are the things that you need to provide? Okay. Simply for an Nginx image, you just need to pass what are the ports need to be exposed. That's it. But if you want to use the MySQL image, these many things you have to pass here. Okay. So this is how they would be creating it here. Okay. MySQL Docker image. Okay. These are the things that you need to that you need to provide if you want to start a MySQL Docker image. One is the name of the container. Another thing is you have to pass your secret password. I mean, you have to pass your a password in order to start a MySQL server. Why? Because right, by default, database will start with a user, which or it will set up with a password that you are going to provide. That is been that is how they have defined how to use an image. For example, you create your own image, and you can put a constraint. If you want to start my image, you have to pass two parameters. One is username and password. You can put a constructions like that. Similarly, if you want to start a MySQL container, you need to pass this minimum parameter, that is as an environment variables here. Okay, MySQL root password and all the stuff here. Okay, so let's see. Now take this example. See, now let me have you understand this, guys. Let me put it in a one more file here. What I'll do is I'll just simply take a line by line and then we'll start here. I'll remove all the extra parts. My data. Okay. Here, Docker. Okay. This is the one. Now let's understand. Now here the main important is the version. Okay. For example, what is meant by version is, you see there is a something called Docker Compose. You should have an installation of a Docker Compose here. Okay, meaning generally when you do install a Docker, it does not come up with the Docker Compose. You have to specifically install the Docker Compose if your Docker version is a older version. Okay, so currently we are using the latest version of a 24, so we don't require Docker Compose need to be installed separately. Okay, so the major thing is one more here, you have to specify which version of a Docker Compose or which version of a Docker Compose YAML file you are using. Okay, okay, this guy is saying please user 3.1. When you say Docker Compose 3.1, what will happen is there are some keywords which are available which does not available in a different version. For example, most of the whatever the content inside this contains has everything applicable for the lower versions of the Composer file also here. Okay, so now let's take a first service. The service name is a web server. Okay, The image name is for this web server service. For that they are using nginx image. That is the one. And alpine is a version name, like a tag name. And the container they have put as a web server. And restart unless it stopped, meaning what does it saying is, like in a docker container we are providing a multiple commands, right? Like a -v, -port, -name and everything, right? There is a something called restart, right? Equal to always, meaning even if some problem has happened within this container, it will automatically start another container, even if it stops. Okay, that is meaning. Here what this guy is saying is, unless stop, meaning until you manually kill this container, if anything happened and stopped, automatically start it. You need to stop only, I mean, for example, if my nginx server container got stopped suddenly because of some internal error, what compose will do is it will start again, because you have given a condition restart if anything happened, except unless I stopped it. Meaning, if you intentionally stop it, it will keep on restart if something happened. Okay, so that is the meaning of it. For example, if you give something like always means even if I kill manually, you start again. Okay, that's why. That's how you would be giving. And while running a container of nginx image, expose ports called 8080. The right side is represents the container port. Inside a container, there is a port is working. There is a port is going to run on port 080. On the right side, expose the same service in the same port number. For example, here you can give a triple three zero port, meaning in the Docker container using a service under the port number, migrate or map with the 330 on the host number. So you can give something like that. Okay, but here this guy is saying using the same thing. The best practice is whatever the port is using inside a container, use the same or map the same port in the host container also here. Okay, this is how these guys are exposing the nginx web server. Okay, now they are creating another service called DB service. In the DB service, the image they are using as a MySQL image. Okay, and the container name, whenever you start an image, one container will be get created. The container name is a MySQL DB. Here also they have applied a restart policy. I mean restart keyword, that is nothing but a unless stopped. Okay, and apart from that, this MySQL image is also require attaching some more things called database. Okay, what does it mean is, database means what? Database main purpose is storing a data in a structural format, right? If you remember, Docker container is a stateless. So, meaning it does not, the container does not store any of the data in it within itself, right? So what these guys are saying is, since the main purpose of using a database is to store the database. So since container does not have the container does not have the capability of storing a data in itself, they are attaching the volume, and whatever the data contains inside of a database, it will store that data inside this DB data. The right side represents the container path and the left side represents the host path, meaning whatever by default database will store the data under the var lib mysql, but whatever the data storing inside of this path, please use db data folder which is inside my host. So it won't store the data inside a container. Instead of storing there, it will store the data inside a host folder, that is a db data. And one more thing is, and expose a port called 3306. By default, MySQL database running on a 3306 port. Okay, like nginx or apache, it will use the 80 port, right? Similarly, mysql is also will use a 3306 port. And one more thing is, here these guys are saying while creating a container, this guy is also passing some of the environment variables, like how he is passing ports and volumes, right? He is also passing us um, four environment variables that he is saying. One environment variable is my SQL root password file, and use this path as this one. So don't use this. It is another concept. You'll get a confused. You directly use what is that? For example, password is Narendra. 1 minute. What these guys are have created. If you see here, if you ask me, these are the two files this guy is representing. What he is doing is he's randomly generating some string and putting that inside a db password.txt, db root password.txt. Okay. And then he is referring that files under this one. This is like a Docker secrets. I mean, instead of storing, have you ever seen password in a plain text? No, right? You would applying a Docker secrets. So if you start a Docker secret, it will be confuse you. So I don't want to make you confused right now, because we would be using a Docker secret in another way. Okay. Now let's come to here. So instead of that, I'm using my root password file is Narendra, and here MySQL password is also Narendra only. So I'm just giving, this is it. And here I don't require of using this secret, since I'm not using this secret. Okay. So here I'm not using anything. Okay. So here also I'm not using any secrets because I have removed the secrets part. Here you have to specify in each web services. I mean, in each of the services, what are things that you have used? You have to specify, okay, I'm using a volumes as a separate one other than a port and environment variables. If you attach some network, right, what you need to do is network name is name is app network or app server network, and driver local. I mean, you have to specify something. At that time, what you need to do is you have to specify network app server. You have to specify something like this. Whenever you introduce a new component in your Docker commands, you have to specify, okay, I have used these volumes, I have used these networks. So it won't throw you any errors if you mention like this. Okay, this is the syntax how you do write it. Okay, so you have to remember all these syntaxes also here. This is a YAML format that you would be using. You would learn more about while we are running about the Ansible part, especially the YAMLs. Okay. So now currently this is my Docker Compose here. Now let me bring it up here. Docker compose, and just up say Docker Compose up. That's it. If you have a different name other than docker-compose.yaml, you have to specify -f the file name here. Okay. What is the guy is doing is, see, it is running totally two things, web server and DB. There are two services we have defined in our compose file. Now, since these two images were not present under my local registry, it went through Docker Hub registry and downloaded this, and then trying to start it now. Now this is in the state of downloading the Docker image itself only. So it is taking time also to download all this stuff. Let's wait to complete this, and then we will see how it will run it. Okay. Remember, these are the layers in it. Okay, these are the layers. Each layer is a one instruction in a Docker compose. I mean Docker file, if you remember. Okay. Meanwhile, what I'll do is I'll try to. I mean, any questions, guys? By the way, because I can try to explain you in a instead of I'll try to put in a different way now. Okay, in a Docker simple plain command. Okay, you will easily understand now, because this is a you have to really understand, and these are the you have to some in some of the interviews you have to explain what are these and how it will do, and even they will try to ask you to convert in a Docker plain command instead of a compose file. Docker run -d -d means daemon mode. Daemon mode means when you run any of the containers, it will run in a background mode. Okay, so Docker d, for example, the image name is MySQL 5.7, right? Okay. Now, while you are running this image, you have to pass a separate couple of parameters. First one is the container name. What is the relevant one here? MySQL DB. Okay. Second one is the restart as unless, right? I mean, no. Without this one, restart equal to unless stopped here. And apart from that, this is also requiring some more parameters related to the port -p equal to 3306 colon 3306. Okay. And -e, the first one is this one, environment variables. If you remember, I have given this one -e again, and MySQL database, and another parameter called MySQL username, that is also WordPress. Okay, here also we have given a WordPress. Okay, and there is another parameter we are passing MySQL password file. This is the one. Password file is again Narendra I have given here. So this is how you do is starting all these parameters. Okay, now you can ignore of all these secrets. Okay. And so finally, you would use a Docker Composer. Here we will run this command in order to run this one. Let's see whether it is still downloading it. Let it complete it here. Okay. I hope this is how we would be converting a from Docker Compose to Docker run command. Okay. This is kind of a, you have to do a reverse engineering also. Okay. Now let's once this is done, we will be getting a we will be getting a we will be getting a process list like this. See, the web server called Nginx is exposing 443 port and 80 port. MySQL DB is also exposing a port called 3306. Okay, that is what it has been. If everything goes down, it will automatically pull up Nginx server. Okay, that is what it has been doing here. Okay, still downloading it. Let it wait. I think another time is there, but fine. But this is how you need to work with the Docker Compose file. And like this, there are some other things called Docker Compose up, down, config, PS, and everything. We will show you those also in another terminal. Since in this terminal, it's already been using it. Okay, right? Okay. Now Docker Compose hyphen help. Here, this is what we have just used to create and start a containers. If you want to stop it, you can use a Docker compose stop to stop the service. If you want to use the, for example, here we have used, there are two services we have, Docker web and Redis, right? Or take an example of the same thing. Docker web server and yeah, these are the two services, MySQL DB service and web server, right? So if you want to specifically stop something, right? Docker compose up, Docker compose down, meaning all Docker compose services will be down. Or if you want to compose only particular services, for example, web server from a web server, this is one. And if you want to start only specific service from a compose file, you can do mention. Or if you want to both, right, my web server comma mysql db. So like this you can mention multiple or single services itself also here. And if you want to see the what are the services are running, docker compose ps. Okay, so this is how you would be using a Docker Compose. And if you want to see different things also here, you would be doing it. Okay. And you can also use a similar one, Docker exe, and whatever you have learned, Docker exec, Docker it. All right, you can apply the same commands other than these also here. Okay. And now let's see what is happening here. Oh my God, let it go. Okay, see here, there is a one network. If you see here, there is a one network by default. It is creating my data default. Volume is also getting created at default, and the container is also got created, and MySQL DB container is also got created. Now these are the logs. If you see here, if you see the colored one, this is a service name. This is a MySQL service, MySQL DB service log, and this is a web server log here, and this is a MySQL service log, and this is a, see, if you see here, all are all are the logs of web server, all are the logs for the MySQL database server. So all the logs will be keep on coming like this. Now let's check Docker compose. Yes, yeah. Okay. My data here. What is the problem here is whenever you use a Docker Compose, it what does it do is it will tell you, I mean, what does it do is it will go inside, I mean, it will find a file called docker-compose.yaml file. Since I'm in a home directory which does not have a Docker Compose YAML file, what does it do is it is throwing an error, no configuration file provided. That is why it is throwing an error. Now what I've done is I went through inside of my data and then executing here. Then it found the docker compose.yaml file, and then found these are the services which has represented, and this has been going on here. Okay, so if you see here, there is a restarting. If you see here, and even if you do, it will keep on restarting because this guy is throwing an error saying that what is this service? The service is a MySQL database server. If you see the status here, right, you have to specify. If you see here, it's restarting less than a second ago. For every second, it is keep on restarting. Why? Because it has been failing. If you see the error logs in the MySQL server, MySQL service in the Docker Compose file, it is throwing an error saying that, hey dude, I can't find the Docker entry.sh find. This is an error. So why it is doing is it is finding a some it is looking for some folder and it couldn't found, and then that's why it is Docker contain, I mean, database container of MySQL DB container got stopped. And then since we have provided us a parameter called restart unless or always, it is restarting it automatically. Otherwise, it would have been stopped here. But if you see here, another service called web server of image of Nginx, and then it is giving a name called web server. It has been updated a minute ago and exposing 80 port and 443 port. Okay, this is how it has been using of all these stuffs. Okay, now if you want to stop it here, right, what you can do is simply either you cut this process, and then it will throw you, or else you can just do docker stop, docker down. So it is stopped and removed. Let's see, this one is also got updated. Okay, see now all thing goes down here. Now what you can do is, if you want to run in a background mode directly in stuff like this, -d, it will just start it and then display you here. If you don't provide a -d like a Docker image, it will run in a foreground mode. Since if we want to run it in a background mode, we just provide a -d. Okay, now what I'll do is Docker compose ps. It will show you all the processes are running. Now, if I want to see the logs of this guy, especially only the things, Docker compose logs, service name is MySQLDB. No service called MySQLDB. What is saying is DB. See, these are the logs. Docker compose logs of this service. What is this service? Service name is a DB here. Okay, these are the existing logs. If I want to live logs, what I can do is -f, follow this. It is keep on going like this. Now I want to see the logs of web server. If you see here, just type web and then automatically suggest it. See, it keep on going. I mean, meaning all these stuffs are going like this. It's, I mean, it is updating the live logs instead of showing last few lines, it is updating you the live logs here. Okay, any questions guys on this part, especially the Docker compose? Okay, okay, Tejasvi, are you there? Okay, looks like people has not shown up today, but still no problem, we will continue here. Okay, now we just seen how to use a logs also here with the Docker compose. Okay, now, I mean, that's how generally we do that. Now let's talk about Tejasvi. Do you have any questions so far? No problem. Don't have any. We can discuss if you find any other issues also. I mean, if you remember, you can post the questions on us. Okay, clear with that? Okay, okay, cool, sure. Okay, now let's talk about one more thing that we want to talk about is um, Docker registries here. If you see here, Docker Hub, there is something called Docker Hub, hub.docker.com. This is the place where we will store our Docker images. Okay, here we would be writing, we would be creating an account in a Docker Hub, and this is the place where we will store the Docker images also. I do have already one image called Docker image, one account. So I'm just opening my account here and then see if something, okay. Okay, I need to reset my password. Let me do one thing. Let me create the Docker image itself and then see here. Here, okay, okay, stays here. So I'm signing up the Docker part. Reject all here, verify. Okay, I'm signing up here. This username is already been taken. Okay, now let me do the same thing here. Chimneys, where is a chimney? Here is a chimney, here is a chimney. You don't have any, yeah, looks like this. Okay, okay, password. I'm giving it. I just signed up with my uh, new email ID address. Okay, here is my Docker Hub account. Okay, so I don't have any of the repositories yet here. Okay, under my repository, I don't have anything at here. So what I do is, and if you see here, there are some Docker hubs. I mean, there are some images are available from the popular tools. For example, if you take Nginx, what they have done is they have created an account under the Docker hub. Under the Docker hub, they have created a one repository called public repository, which will everyone able to access it, and then they post it. We will also do the same thing here. And after creating after creating an account of a Docker hub, you just create a repository here. My repository, yeah, this guy is saying I have to verify it. Yeah, okay, now let me check. Okay, what I'll do is I'll just stop and then verify it. Just to give me a minute. So I'll be just verifying it here. Okay, I'm verifying it. Okay, I'm back now. So I have just verified it. Now I can go to my repositories and then create a repository here. My repository name is Naren Images. This is this repo contains generic images. This guy is complaining about this one. Okay, fine. And this is okay. So visibility, this is an important public and private here. So generally most of the organizations will push their or will create the repository as a private because they are working for an organization. So I'll make it as a public for now, and then I'll just create a this one. And currently there is no one has been, I mean, there is no images has been published or do not have under this repository here. So now what I'll do is, if I want to push any of the image into this repository, you have to make sure this is a one kind of a small backdrop to the Docker concepts. You have to name your Docker image with this and then tag name. This is how you have to define your rename your image name here. Okay, let's see what are the images have been present on the repository. Yeah, I do have these many images. What I need to do is, if I want to publish this image, for example, track rat email, my image name should be, if you see here, repository, right? The repository name should be this one, Narayan DevOps / Narayan images. And the tag name should be anything, either latest or 0.1. Then only I can able to push this track rat email image to my repository. This is a one kind of a drawback. If we want to do for the multiple images or multiple things, right, what you know do, you have to create a multiple repositories. This is like a one repository for one image maintenance. Okay, you can't store the multiple images into a one repository. Of course you can store, but it is illogically, I mean, it's not a logical thing. I mean, it will keep on overriding it. So what I'll do is docker t, we have to rename a Docker image in first place if we want to display. I mean, if you want to either that thing or under the repositories, create a repository and the repository name should be this one. At any way, you have to give this one. Okay, this is a public and this is the email. So you have to rename with this one. Okay. So Docker, if you want to rename the image, what you need to do is Docker -t change the tag name of this guy. Track rat, email, colon latest, hyphen T, and then tag name is latest. Okay. This guy is saying this is not way you to use a Docker tag. Rename the Docker image. Okay. This is exactly what the image tag space this one. Okay. Same thing here. What we do is just simply Docker tag, Docker image tag. Image name is Docker image name is okay now Docker image and this after that you have to give a tag. Okay, I think let's check what is this. Okay, track rat. Okay, there is something called track rat email. TRACRAT track rat. Okay, now let's check Docker images. See, this one has copied with this one. If you see here, the image ID is the same, but another one. Now let's push to this my image here. Okay, if you want to push, what I do is first I need to make sure my image name is exactly matched with this repository name. I have just now done it. Now next thing is I just need to push it. Docker push the image name. This is the one and this is the one. If you see here. Okay. Now once it will start asking me the username and email address. Okay. Request is denied it. I want to push with username and password here. What I do is, okay, it need to ask me by username and repository. Docker push with credentials. First, I need to get authenticate. Docker auth we should be providing here. Docker login and this is the username and email ID. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's log into here. Docker login username equal to Naren DevOps 90 and password is mine. Let's see what it is saying, whether Docker login is successful or not here. We'll see. Okay, login succeeded. If I given another thing, right, it would have been failure. Now let's use the Docker push. So it won't ask me anything. So now it is trying to push into the Docker Hub repository here, a layer by layer. Okay. Now let's see, once this is done, we should be getting a Docker repository updated here itself with the tag name and all the stuff here. Okay, right? And remaining thing is we can provide a Docker names, tags, descriptions, webhooks, all the information, like all the information that we can provide. Let's see, it has been, looks like it is done. Let's check what, yeah, series latest image has been done here. Okay, so like this we can publish our Docker image like this. If someone has to pull our image, this is Docker space pull space naren dev, something like this. So this is how they would be providing it here. Okay, so this is it guys for today, and we have seen how to work with the Docker compose file and how to create a Docker Hub account and how to push into the Docker Hub registry. Okay, so please let me know if you have any questions. I'll see.